First of all, we know that Satan was the one who tempted Jesus. After Jesus had fasted for 40 days and 40 nights, the devil took Jesus up into a high mountain and he showed him all the kingdoms of the world in a moment of time. And he said that all power will I give to thee, all this power will I give to thee. So we see that it was actually his to give. That the devil was in fact ruling over the kingdoms of the world. He's in charge. Therefore the kings under him are subject to him. And he says, and the glory of them as well. So he will give the power and the glory of those nations unto Jesus. And Jesus would just bow down and worship him. So it's something to keep in mind, really, where a lot of the nations get their power from. And I want to talk a little bit about the American dream, which is rooted in your Declaration of Independence. And the Declaration of Independence sounds really good. All men are created equal. Should say all men and women are created equal, but I think we mean men in the non-gender sense. And they are endowed by the Creator with certain inalienable rights, including life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So life, freedom, and happiness, or at least being able to chase happiness. The Bill of Rights, there's a monument outside one of the government buildings, and it actually says, the Bill of Rights was not ordained by nature or God. It's very human and very fragile. And if you think about it for a minute, it's really about the pursuit of the human spirit. It is kind of humanism, if you like. It's pursuing happiness, pursuing wealth, pursuing life, pursuing freedom. All these things that man struggles to do. We don't really have to pursue those things because those are things that God provides in our daily needs. But if you don't have God in your life, then you have yourself to count on. And it was in the garden where Satan said that if you eat of the tree, the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, that ye shall become as gods yourselves. So ever since then there has been this pursuit of dreams by humans on their own. This is called the Washington Mall. And at the close side of this we have the Capitol building where Congress sits. And at the far end there where the water is, we have the Jefferson Monument. And we see the obelisk there as well. And it's kind of an interesting setup. The Washington Monument, the four sides of it are aligned perfectly with the east, west, north, and south cardinal points. And the monument measures 55.5 feet long on each side of its base, which happens to be 666 inches. 666 inches. The height of this obelisk is 555.5 feet, and that equals 6,660 inches. Kind of interesting measurements they chose. You'll see there how it lines up with the sun. And it actually, it is like a sundial. It actually does cast shadows, and you can tell the times and the seasons, the solstices by this device. And it also works with a reflecting pond, so you have the obelisk above and you have the obelisk below. It's not a new thing, the obelisk. We know that they had obelisks in Egypt, and back then they symbolized the sun god Ra. And the king, or the pharaoh, was apparently the sun god in the flesh. He represented the sun god. And so these pyramids and obelisks were used to cast shadows and measure the times, special occult times that they used in Egypt for high days, worship days, and they've been used throughout the centuries by different empires for their high occult days as well. We see another pyramid here in St. Peter's Square. And St. Peter's Square has a lot in common with the Washington Mall. If you look back, and I don't have a picture here, but if you look back where the Pope is standing here, he's standing in a building that looks very much like the Capitol building. The same kind of dome on top of it, same Greco-Roman architecture. And there, out in front of him, is the obelisk, and we can see the mass, the throng of people before him as he blesses them and blesses them. Now the Lincoln Memorials, and as I mentioned, I think the Jefferson Memorial. I meant the Lincoln Memorial. And Jefferson is off to the side. The Lincoln Memorial is where Abraham Lincoln is enshrined as a statue. And on the website for the Lincoln Memorial, it tells us that Abraham Lincoln is enshrined forever. He is the great emancipator and preserver of the nation during the Civil War and sits immortalized in marble as an enduring symbol of freedom. Those words seem to describe more than a man, almost a god. Words like enshrined forever. Words like the great emancipator, preserver of the nation, and immortalized. A little close-up, this is the statue of Abe Lincoln in the monument itself. At the other end of the mall, of course, is the Capitol building. And you see the dome there on the Capitol building. This is where Congress sits. All the men that vote and vote and vote on the laws of the United States. Vote on whether they go to war. Vote on whether they pass abortion. Vote on equal rights. Vote on all the different legalities. At the front of the U.S. Capitol building, there is a statue of the pagan god Mars, and he's been tied back in history to even Baal, who was worshipped in the Semitic area, Middle East. And we know that Israel adopted Baal worship themselves for a time. Even as Elijah called out, "You have forsaken the commandments of the Lord, and thou hast followed Baal. I cry out, how long halt you between two opinions? If the Lord be God, follow him. But if Baal be your God, then follow him." 1 Kings 18, verse 18 and 21. So Israel themselves followed after Baal, and they lost the blessings of God, the direction of God. And here we see these kind of statues around the Capitol. Right underneath the dome, we have what's called the Rotunda Canopy. And this is a massive, massive painting. And it's called the Apothesis of Washington. Theosis, or Theo, means God. And it depicts the first president of the United States rising into the clouds of glory. So Washington himself, as the first president, here he is rising up into heaven like a savior, like a god. And these are the company that are with him. Poseidon and many other gods. Gods of science, gods of agriculture. gods of the marine. On top of the dome, we have the lady. So here's Washington rising up under the lady. And she is known as Lady Freedom. She's known as Lady Liberty. And she seems to be designed after Greek goddesses like Athena or other goddesses, including the American Indian, where she has feathers. And she seems to be a morphing of different goddesses from different times. Who is this lady? She faces east toward the main entrance of the building, which means that incidentally the sun never sets on freedom. The Statue of Liberty, look on her website, it says, enlightening the world. This was a gift of friendship from France as a universal symbol of freedom and democracy. Liberty means freedom, does it not? So here she is, representing liberty, freedom, and all the pursuits of happiness, life. She was dedicated by the Masons to the United States. We have here on the base of the Statue of Liberty the actual dedication, August 5th, 1984. At this site on August 5th, 1884, the cornerstone of the pedestal of the Statue of Liberty enlightening the world was laid with ceremony by William A. Brodie, Grand Master of Masons in the state of New York, Grand Lodge members, representative of the United States and French governments, Army and Navy officers, members of foreign, I believe, delegations, and distinguished citizens were present. This plaque is dedicated by the Masons of New York in commemoration of the 100th anniversary of that historic event. Liberty was named after the Roman goddess Libertas. So that's where she gets some of her attributes from. Freya was a Norse moon goddess. And Freya is really where the name freedom came from. She's a goddess of love and prophecy, magic, but she's also, very significantly, a warrior goddess. She rules over the Valkyries. And the Valkyries were kind of like gods that would swarm over the battlefield and claim their portion at the battlefield. Aspects of her, she was a great mother goddess, a ruler of life and death. And the Valkyries would conduct the souls of the slain heroes to Valhalla. So, you see, these goddesses and their company would summon the soldiers out to battle. And they would know if they did her will, that they would be escorted to Valhalla, or a form of pagan heaven. So there was great motivation to die a hero on the battlefield. This is where the idea of freedom comes from. It's almost an oxymoron. Taking freedom and flipping it around. War equals freedom. She's the goddess of war. And by being at war, sets the people free.